Hello and welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I'm Daragh, that's Shane.
Hello.
It's going to be a little more condensed this week. We only have time to shoot at most an hour long show, but that's okay because there's only one game in town, one show in town this week. I'm wearing the colours.
You are. I'm wearing the away colours.
It's Jags against the Crusaders out in Christchurch.
Yeah.
It's the Super Rugby final, and I'm excited about this one. One.
I've been waiting for a long old time for the Jags to finally make it to a final, and they deserve it.
They did it in some style.
Great style. Very impressive, emphatic victory over the Brumbies, who we were bigging up in our preview for saying like they could potentially stymie them out there just based on some of their showing against the Sharks, but it turned out upon reflection in that game against the Sharks was really like their cup final for that team, and they did a lot of good homework on them. Got the job done in that game, in that circumstance, but they really, not only could they not live with the Jags, but did themselves quite a disservice in that game.
Well, they like it's not even just that. I think stylistically the Sharks worked better for them. The Brumbies are up for the physical challenge, but it was the speed of the Jags game that really did take them out of it.
Yeah.
A constant changing of direction of attack, and it just those big guys who had looked so impressive in that game.
Arnold's and
Arnold's and Sam Carter's, and I know they didn't have Pete Samu, which was a massive loss, obviously, but those two rows in particular were indomitable against the Sharks. But it was a slower pace. It was more bludgeoning and direct, and you got a sense of where the ball was coming every time the Sharks had the ball, whereas the Jags was the exact opposite.
Yeah. Speed and deception.
Yeah, forced speed of thought, forced speed of movement for them in defence, and then eventually by the second half, even those two boys were falling off tackles, and it was all a very grim losing picture for the Aussies, but completely a result of the Jags' wonderful attacking style and their ability to just take the game away from teams not used to playing at that kind of pace.
And like all season long, but particularly the second half of the season, where they've gone, I think they've only lost one game in their last 11 or something along those lines. And
sounds about right, yeah.
And they've just been playing at a different, like you say, a different tempo, up in that to what seems like a frenzied kind of chaotic kind of tempo, but they are very controlled. It often is, but they thrive in that. Yeah. They love playing that heads up style play, so creating a broken kind of field for them to demonstrate their kind of footballing skills, as opposed to just a bit more of a prescribed kind of game plan, which is definitely what you'll see from the Crusaders. And it's like you were making the point interesting, and we were even watching that Brumbies game that like it would cut to the coaches' booths, and like literally they have, was your man Quesada is the only guy in the booth for the Jaguares for the Jaguares, but he's just literally in a room full of chairs on his own watching the game, and going up against the Crusaders, where there is quite the brains trust of like just many good heads all bouncing ideas back off each other. It's a very different approach to the game.
I was reading a stuff.co.nz article about Quesada's his reasoning for that. Now he does have a very small coaching ticket. It is just him and two other guys, which is very much not what the Crusaders have got going on.
Yeah, well, it's not the prevailing trend in world rugby at the moment. It's interesting.
But he likes to be in there by himself. He likes to watch the games with no sort of outward input. Him by himself in a room overlooking everything, sort of dispassionate and disconnected, seeing the game is how he likes to think of it.
It's interesting.
It's definitely interesting, and it's going to create a good contrast for television. I like Crusaders' brain trust in one room of near on 8-9 guys in that room watching on, versus Quesada. Alone in his room.
It could be a daunting enough challenge in Christchurch to be sure, but yeah, no, you can't but admire what the Jags have done this year, and it's just you can't argue. They were they look one of the two best teams in the comp. The league table reflected that in terms of points accrued, and now the final reflects that in terms of who's where. The only unfortunate thing is that the Canes couldn't do them the favour of beating those Crusaders, which they had the chances to do. They were in that game till the very end.
Canes were and are a great side and a lot of fun to watch, and TJ Perenara in the form of his life.
Absolutely,
Crusaders definitely got lucky with that little Sam Whitelock slap that
That's
killed
true,
the game.
actually. That looked very illegal and potentially binnable on Sam White,
which would have been game changing. So the Crusaders definitely not infallible. I thought that maybe if there was a team to beat them, it was going to be the Canes, but the Jags will give it a go.
the Jags, as we'd said prior to the Jags game against the Brumbies, they're better placed than the Brumbies to go to Christchurch and cause an upset for sure, just because of stylistically how they play the game. If things click in the first 20 minutes and it goes try, what's the response then? It's like putting the onus on the Crusaders to respond. That's something you can potentially see the Jags doing, whereas the Brumbies would go pack versus pack and ultimately come up wanting, because the Crusaders pack is still mighty.
Totally. From the Crusaders perspective, this is obviously a massive game. It's sort of the end of an era. This has been, like, we don't know what the next years to come are going to bring for the Crusaders, but you feel like there is a bit of a departure.
Changing of the guard, there are a few heads going.
There's a load of heads going, and it's like you're going to be without Kieran Reid, Ryan Crotty, Owen Franks, Sam Whitelock, Matt Todd, Jordan Taufua.
Bit of a spine in that team there,
And then obviously you've Andrew Moore and Ronan O'Gara leaving. Bradmore, sorry. And Ronan O'Gara leaving the coaching ticket, with the potential that guys like Scott Robertson
could be getting a call up for All Black duty sooner than later.
Exactly. There's good offers going to be flying in post World Cup to everybody, so there's certainly a potential that more of that backroom staff is going to be gone, and so they've been together more or less as a unit for the last couple of years, and it would be 3 in a row would be real greatness.
That's
and they are one of the
they're aspiring to.
They're one of the great Super Rugby teams. So it's
still rare enough, even like 3 in a row in any competition, any of the, it's just a very, very tough feat to accomplish, and they have every chance to do it. It's in Christchurch. They have an opponent that they do know well, although they haven't played them this season, which is a bit of an anomaly, which is curious. It makes it a more exciting final as well. There's so many variables, but it's a team they know well. They know how dangerous they are, but it's a welcome final. It's a good challenge to have to face should they want to achieve that 3 in a row, which they surely do, all of them.
Yes.
And like the likes of Ronan O'Gara, who's leaving after only 2 seasons, but would love to have an unblemished record when he comes up to the Northern Hemisphere. It would do his confidence the world of good, as well as his probably credentials.
That said, the Jags almost have more riding on it.
This is what I was going to say, because like, as much as 3 in a row and greatness is one thing to aspire to, like the Jags and Argentina in general haven't, for all their great successes and wonderful style of play, haven't actually won any silverware. Of top quality rugby kind of silverware, like
in the pro era, no.
And like a Super Rugby title would be not. I was going to say unprecedented, but it's not really. This Jags team has always been bubbling there as a potential kind of firecracker, and now this season they've shown what they can do when it clicks, and they are really in the mood to play. And they've looked, certainly towards the end of the regular season, like the Crusaders kind of had an ease off of a couple of games that didn't go their way. I remember that one out in Suva that the Chiefs beat them in, and like they've had a few more hiccups, whereas the Argentine side have been like flawless pretty much. Barring the quarter final where there was a bit more stuttering against the Chiefs again. But the Chiefs can do that. But they still got that win, and it's like if you're talking about a precedent set, this would be a remarkable season capped off by a deserved first win. So the narrative makes sense for both, you see.
It does. Narrative wise, it's very interesting. Both sides highly motivated. In terms of how the game is going to go, there's loads of different ways to look at it. I mean, the Crusaders D against the Jags attack is just a fascinating little matchup. They're going to have to be obviously physical up front, more of a breakdown presence needed. I think Matt Todd needs a big game.
He's been a bit quiet in the knockout.
He's been quite quiet. He kind of coughed up that Ben Lamb try when TJ got outside him pretty softly in the semi-final. And he's just been, he hasn't been himself at the breakdown. The Highlanders got the better of them in that area as well. And certainly in the absence of Scott Barrett, massive loss in that back line, in that pack rather. That physical edge is going to need to be there to stop the Jags getting go forward and just allow them facilitate a defensive width that they're going to need to keep, obviously, to prevent them from getting outside them. But it's width they need, and also 2 in the backfield, probably Mo'unga and Havili in the backfield, along with a fully wide defence. Like it's
fronting up, bringing line speed,
speed. I mean,
and harrying them in rucks, because you can't allow them to get speed and go forward. And also the kicks, which I'm sure they will be ready for, attacking kicks. I'm curious to see how the Jags do approach that, where they're just going to persist with it, because it's we've seen with like even the first 20 minutes of that Hurricanes game, when you thought it was just going to drift away from them, when they kept kicking it to them, and the Crusaders were happy to take it into possession, and it's like a tough thing to do when you kick away possession so early in an attacking set. The Crusaders are better placed than pretty much any team in this competition to make you suffer for it, like make you have to make tackles for the next 7 to 10 minutes because you chose to kick it to us.
Exactly.
And that's something that could be an avenue for success for the Crusaders. Alternatively, those kicks can stick. When you see the Jags doing them, like they can create fast tries.
They're at their best when they've already got outside them.
That's
the key for the Crusaders, is to get that sort of outside in blitz. Massive job on the shoulders of Goodhue, like you talked about.
Crotty's not there, and he's normally their defensive leader in that little area.
So stop the Jags to getting the ball into the hands of their wingers on the front foot. Keep them on the inside, win those collisions on the inside, and then if they choose to kick it, you're ready for it. It's back foot kicking as opposed to front foot kicking, and that's massive.
That's so good counter-attacking opportunity.
Yeah, if you're the Crusaders, that area is massive, and if you're the Jags, you are seeing some avenues for opportunity, because Goodhue's defence has been a little bit ropey. If you can get outside him, if you can get your ball into your winger's hands. Get Mojano moving forward in a bit of space, attacking Parisse,
attacking his outside shoulder kind of thing.
There's definite Crusade. Those boys aren't necessarily elite level defenders. The Crusaders outside channel, if you can get to it, and that's where the Jags like to play.
Goodhue's kind of struggled in some of the knockout games more so than the regular season in defending that area, and Parisse, as good as he has been, and he has been excellent going forward, there have been defensive frailties that have revealed themselves just throughout the course of the year. Things like his turn, sometimes his tackling, sometimes his positioning on just last ditch tackling isn't where it probably should be, especially now he's going to the
Mojano and Maroney, whoever's going to be on what wing, like those boys are going to test
dangerous. They are so dangerous, and then with whoever's at fullback as well for them, like they have options there too. Their back three options are all fire and really can't be slept on at all, and those centre partner, especially with Crotty out now, like the Jags have seniority in terms of centre.
They would have anyway. De La Fuente and Orlando have been playing together for seemingly the last decade.
For sure, they know each other really well, and they were very, very impressive in how they shut down the Brumbies. Now, the Brumbies were not the Crusaders, and we've said that before, of course, and they were like Lealiafano's positioning and spacing at 10, as well as just the depth, was not right, and it was being called out by actually the Aussie commentators correctly in this instance, rather than just kind of biasly. They were pointing out that they were just manned up one on one and not deep enough, so that the Jags had plenty of time to get in their face, and they were forcing the pass then, which isn't their game. So it was like they were impressive in shutting that down. The Crusaders always have a bit more subtlety to that kind of multi-phase. When you see a Crusaders attack, it feels very detailed watching it. Feels like everyone knows their role, where they're going on X phases and stuff, and that's that brain trust element we were alluding to. Like, they're very, very detailed.
There's a lot less sort of, but there is some off the cuff stuff, but they sort of make it happen, like Reese's opening try last week, where it was off a very good box kick, and Crotty just gathered and saw the space and kicked it. And
that is heads up play, but it's the systems that are in place that are allowing them to make those reads. They know where the options are, so they know where to scan.
A massive area I would imagine of dominance for the Crusaders, or an area where you would give the Crusaders the edge, would be the 10 shirt. As good as Diaz Banilla's been, I think Mong has been the pick of the 10s, apart from maybe Pollard in the whole competition.
Well, it's hard to say give that to Pollard, even because of just the Bulls.
Top scorer though, and he was playing in a terrible team.
That's true.
It's not that as important as just Richie Wong has been class.
Yes,
and I'm curious to see how often he's going to kick the ball, in what context he's going to kick the ball. But he's been running a very nice show with that Crusaders back line, and if he can peg the Jags back, if he can keep their defence guessing, keep them honest, and then put the Crusaders in the right parts of the field, that's very much a winning formula. If the Crusaders can dominate the territory game, it's going to make life a lot more difficult for the Jags.
Yeah, especially if things happen like the rain comes down in Christchurch. You never know, but it could do as well. That'll definitely, that kind of thing. A deterioration in conditions will edge it towards the Crusaders as well. I feel like there's a lot of intangibles pointing in the Crusaders' direction. They can't be understated. Things like the travel as well. Such a factor. Like if you're playing in Buenos Aires one week, you're up on the biggest high of pretty much the season, but also the whole club has never seen a high like that. We won the home semi-final, and now we're going to the final. You have to celebrate that, but then wait to see where it was. Anticipate, be so on board for the Hurricanes, doing them a favour, have them fall short, have to sober up,
pack
your bag, get on a plane, go to Christchurch, and then face the Crusaders.
Yeah.
Which is like, that is such a mammoth undertaking. It can't really be understated how much that's going to tax them. Whereas the Crusaders don't have any of that. They have time to rest, recuperate, study some tape, you know, do the detail work, and hope for the rain, you know.
It's also it's for me, it's a lot of it's going to depend on just how focused the Crusaders' heads are, because it depends. Like, if the Jags are not there, they're not there. That's going to be it. If they drop balls, if they fall off tackles, that's a losing picture straight away.
Yeah.
But the way that they attack, and if you watch most of the tries that they've scored this season, it's just about applying like chaotic pressure on an opposition defence and then exploiting their mistakes. And you saw that even with the opening try after a few minutes last week. It was just a change of direction, a back against the grain, a little chip over the top. I can't remember even who it was. One of the loose forwards from the Brumbies was caught on the turn and completely failed to deal with the ball, and then the wingers are just going to attack it. It's that sort of Stockdale, Tommy Bowe from an Irish perspective mindset of just constantly attacking the breaking ball, and that's what works for them. But if you get a very smart, well drilled team like the Crusaders,
who are expecting it,
who are ready for it, exactly, if they can deal with it and shut down that avenue for the Jags,
that may lead to, like I said earlier, just those, like, instead of the attacking set getting momentum and getting over the gain line, Crusaders deal with it, and now the Jags have to defend for the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Exactly. And
like, that could very easily be the picture.
When the Crusaders get their attacking drive, there's less of that the reliance on opposition mistakes, and more just a consistent hammering of the wall, constant changing and varying of movement and position.
Rare
and then
to kick it away cheaply as well. They sooner go back into contact and go again than try a speculative chip. Even like Mo'unga has lovely bags of chips in his arsenal, like, and he's not averse to if the blanket defence is coming up in his face too quick, he will chip over the top and stuff like that. But he's operating within a system that has options off either side for him. If he's not sure, there's always a safe enough option that can go in, and the ruck is usually resourced pretty well.
Totally.
It'd be interesting to see now who's winning collisions, because those Argentinian guys are very physical and athletic, and they can be very aggressive in periods of the game. Like the pack in the Jaguares pack can do serious damage, but they can do damage to themselves as well, because they can get so up for it that they end up being on the wrong side of the law a little bit, and then leaking some penalties.
Penalties will kill them. Although the Crusaders have not been saints in that department
in that area, no. But like players like Lavanini, who can be absolutely stellar with ball in hand sometimes, but can also look really average while he's like coughing up 3 consecutive penalties at a 60-minute mark, and really lose you a game from there. Certainly,
like, in terms of what the Crusaders are trying to do to shut down their attack, it would be massive for the Jags if they could get a leg up in that contact area. I mean, it's going to be tough, a little less tough without Scott Barrett and Ryan Crotty in there, for sure, but certainly tough to get the better of those contacts. But Pablo Matera, Ortego Decio, Guido Petty, I mean, they're very good dynamic players.
And Creevy will be in there in the breakdown, making a nuisance of himself as usual.
So if they can get a leg up with ball in hand, and if they can hold their own defending the Crusaders in that contact zone, it's going to make it a lot easier for them, though. But certainly,
I do think that this team, more so than the Jags in the last few seasons, like they do have quality that leads me to believe that this is going to be a tight one for large periods. It's going to come down to 1 or 2 scores. I don't think it's going to be blown out either way. I think the Jags will be there to defend, will be there to make a nuisance of themselves in the breakdown. There will be 3-pointers kicked in the first few forays and exchanges by both sides. I'm just wondering, come 60 minutes, that's really where my worry lies.
And my worry is just in how good the Crusaders can be. I mean, sometimes you watch Crusaders score a try and you're trying to pick holes in what the defence is doing, and you actually see a defence doing pretty damn well, and then all of a sudden a ball just comes out of a contact and everything is perfect. That's the thing about the Crusaders, is when they get a bit of momentum about them, everything is perfect and it's constant and it doesn't stop, and there's players picking perfect angles, and all of a sudden one guy gets his hand through a contact and it's just a try. The defence is powerless to stop it, and when they get that momentum, they score tries and 2s and 3s and 4s.
The footballing ability of all of them, like, it's symptomatic when you have like Kieran Reid as your number 8 and captain. Like, it's just the footballing chops on all of those people, and it's like you overlook
George Bridge.
I was going to say George Bridge, like, he's such a clever footballer. Even Havili as well. Like, and Goodhue, who we like may say have doubts about some of his defensive chops, but with ball in hand, he executes things pretty bang on most of the time. He does just the right thing a lot of the time and works very well next to Crotty whenever he's there. But Enor is someone who I'm not worried about either, because he's another Crusader who come up
phenomenal player,
absolutely excellent this year. So it's just the way they play the game is very measured and like very kind of cerebral.
There isn't a guy on the pitch from Joe Moody all the way through to David Havili. There isn't a guy who you wouldn't trust to do a 2-on-1 in half a second. Yeah, like if they need to do that, they'll do it.
Exactly,
and that's why it's so daunting. Is just that they'll pick tries off time after time after time if given the opportunity. Yeah, which is why territory is going to matter so much. I'd love to see Diaz Benilla pin them back and make them exit,
not just attacking kicks like that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if the back three are coming forward. But certainly if they are to attack one wing, it would be Severis. You wouldn't really expect George Bridge too many errors.
If you're kicking balls at him, be prepared to be disappointed. Like, it's not an avenue for success. And actually, to be honest, even with Severis, you need to, like, the only kicks he would be doing would be contestables, like,
or kicks in behind,
him. Exactly. But like just kicking it long to him, or
of course,
that's stupid stuff against the Crusaders.
And to be fair, the Jags tend not to. They kick with purpose.
They actually that particular kick of just kind of hoofing it long is something they are very averse to doing. They do avoid it. They sooner kind of try something speculative, ball in hand, and cough the ball up. That sometimes is a picture that happens before they end up kicking it loosely. But they do kind of try some more speculative, what we would deem like less than 50-50 kind of shots with their kicks, but they sometimes drop it on the toe anyway, just to create that chaotic element. Like, it's less, and that's why it's such a great matchup. Like, the Crusaders wouldn't be caught dead doing that, because they're too detailed. They won't create that chaos unless it's their own designed kind of chaos that they know where the variables are. So it's not that chaotic really, it's just kind of controlled but high paced stuff, whereas the Argentinians are really back their skill set enough to create a picture that's not prescribed, so that then you remove certain players that are very good on prescriptive game plans, remove that game plan entirely and create just a picture that's a bit dazzling, and then capitalise. And they've scored so many excellent tries all season against all manner of opposition using that exact principle, and it remains to be seen whether the Crusaders in Christchurch will fall victim to it as well, because literally every other team that the Jags have come across this year
they've found tries
against them. So which leads me to believe they'll probably do the same against Crusaders.
Probably, the Crusaders will give them a rougher time in around that fringe area. Cabelli is a good head, though. I think you would trust him to make quick ball where he can and to not get rattled. And I would say the same with Bryn Hall. I wouldn't expect too many halfbacks.
There are two halfbacks that I don't think are slow at all.
Or rattleable,
really. Not really, no. Yeah. Well, like, the job on Matt Todd's shoulders is to try and create messy ball for Cabelli. Whether it's quick or not is on him, but it needs to be kind of messy and frenzied. And Todd himself is overdue for a big performance in a Crusaders shirt, because he's not going to be in the reckoning. Probably he isn't. I don't think, for the Rugby Championship, is he?
I'm not
sure if he's on that list, but he's a Crusader through and through, and he's the number 7, and he needs to be making that breakdown absolutely fiendish, because you just can't. No matter who you are, even if you are the Crusaders, you can't allow the Jaguares just clean reign or free reign to go create recycle, create like 1 second, 2 second rooks, because that is just going to kill you. Like, they're so good at capitalising on that kind of stuff, and they have no bother going wide to where the space is immediately. So it's just, you need to be hounding them in that area and make it a contest. So I'm curious to see that in the first 20 minutes. What's happening at the breakdown will be fascinating. Maul time, I'm not sure who's going to get an edge there or who's going to try to. I suspect the Crusaders will try and maul a little bit.
Depends if they have a set to do it. But you could just as easily see trick plays with Cody Taylor coming around the corner or in the corner.
Yeah, coming back 2 little passes and then up the 5 metre channel potentially, for sure. But it's the Battle of the Packs is definitely a good one. And now that with Barritt removed from the Crusaders pack, it just feels like a little bit of a levelling of the playing field, because that Crusaders pack is always so formidable when you're looking at it against any other team, that it's very hard to give any other team a fair shake when you're thinking they're going to go up against that Crusaders pack where they're not going to be a match for them, and then it's going to come down to who's the more detailed one, and they're not going to be a match for them in that area either. So it's just a lot of the games in the Crusaders calendar year are foregone conclusions, whereas the Jags, they're a bit more of a wild card than that. It's hard.
They are.
Like their pack, I have seen their pack be indomitable in periods of games, and I've seen them be very sloppy. And
their scrum isn't great.
No, it's not.
For an
Argentina
bad for them.
Yeah.
Their scrum is definitely not great.
The Brumbies were getting the edge on them, weren't they?
Yeah, and a few other teams this season. So that's certainly an area the Crusaders will look to. But there's no question that minus a roaming Scott Barrett and with a more out of form Matt Todd and Kieran Reid with a bit more mileage on the clock, that the pack is not as ferocious as it once was, but still, like Jordan Taufua and Luke Romano off the bench is massive, and Cody Taylor roaming is massive.
Yeah, actually, Cody Taylor v Creevy.
Yeah, it's a good battle.
It's a good battle. They're two of the finest huggers in the world.
If Guido Petty or Lavanini could get up there, there were some Hurricanes picked off some lineouts, and so did the Highlanders too. True. So they'll have to be a little cautious of that too. My instinct overall in terms of prediction is just that the Crusaders are going to have the nous on it. That the Jags' little attacking plays that have been giving them tries are going to be shut down, and so they're not going to get the scores that they need and want, and then the Crusaders at some point in the game will break them down and will get the scores. If I had to predict, I would say Crusaders by maybe 10.
It's fair. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning the same way. I really want the Jags to win. As I've said all the way along, I would like nothing more than the story of this season to be the Jags finally rising to it and getting it done and getting some silverware back to Argentina, because I think it would be tremendous for the Argentinian game as well as the Jags and just the growth therein. Like, I think it's a beautiful story. I think they play beautiful rugby, the prettiest rugby of anyone, but I do think that Christchurch on a week's notice with a half a world of travel thrown into the mix is probably a bridge too far. And also I do think that the Crusaders will be ready for what they have to bring, as well as being capable of scoring their own tries. And I think once that chaos element is shut down, I'm curious, like, if the pace becomes a little bit slower, then it just won't. I don't see it suiting the Jags at all, and I think the Crusaders are probably capable of changing the tempo of the game enough to suit themselves, certainly in Christchurch, and kind of just frustrate.
And even if needs be, the ability to bring on Taufua and Luke Romano, especially in that forward pack. Yeah. Even Mitch Drummond adds a lot, and that could just be enough to get
potentially. But then that, like, I can see both results. I can see if the Jags start really well, like a bat out of hell, and grab a brace or in the first quarter or something, then it's game on. And I firmly believe it's game on and could go either way. I'd still probably just favour the Crusaders to possibly get that done, but. Yeah, overall, if I'm looking at the most likely scenario, it is a Crusaders win. I'm not going to say 10, I'm going to say 5.
Okay.
But yeah, I reckon the Crusaders are going to go 3 in a row, unfortunately. But
good for them.
Good for them. Team. But no, the Jags have something to say about that.
They do.
I hope they do. I really hope they do. They're such a fantastic team.
They are, and they've been a real great credit to the comp. So
for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's Beauty versus the Beast.
This is it. And, that's exactly what it is.
On Saturday, the Super Rugby final, so be sure to tune in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We will be watching, and then we'll be back next week to talk about it as well, and in all its glory. Before we move on from Club Rugby, the last game of meaningful domestic rugby this side of the World
Cup.
Yeah,
so
that's very true.
Embrace it, enjoy it. It's and what a game to see it all off.
Yeah. So I suppose we'll move on. We do have bits of other stuff to cover. We'll just we're going to do our other news thing at the end, but we're going to just move on to the World Rugby Super Series between
the women's
World Rugby Super Series.
Yeah.
Or is it just the Women's Rugby Super Series?
Women's
Rugby Super Series. I thought, okay, run by World Rugby.
Indeed.
But yeah, no, we were watching some of the games from it. We were talking about it last week. It's a great idea for a tournament. I think that the 5 teams that are there. Excellent. Like, it's just great to see competitive professional women's games. Amazing.
And play to a higher standard.
Play to a much higher standard. Like, because that's always, we do watch the Women's Six Nations, particularly the Ireland games usually, and it's just a bit like it's great and root for them. It's a little bit like watching rugby from the 90s sometimes though. Like, it's a lot of just a straight line, back line, forwards all in one little area of the pitch, and we'll spread it wide. It's very old school compared to where the men's game has gone, but with a few teams that's not the case, and the England women is one, the French women is the other in the Six Nations context. And then you have the Black Ferns down south, and also this Canada team,
yeah,
who I didn't actually know before watching this tournament, but they're big and strong and organised, and they're very impressive. It seems like the USA are the whipping girls in this particular comp, but they're still up to a standard where they actually have a bit of professional chops to them and a bit of shape.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's
they
good
are
to see that.
getting creased at the moment, the US.
They
but,
are.
Certainly there was good rugby to be had in the opening days, but the two Canadian games, one result either way, the Black Ferns getting the better of them, and then that performance against France by Canada,
was very impressive.
It was really great, yeah, and it was like you say that there's some of the Six Nations rugby is almost from the 90s. We were commenting during the France-Canada match that it almost had the look and feel of a game from like the mid-aughts.
Yeah.
It's just in that lesser stage of professional rugby where you know the sort of elite athlete level and the sort of elite coaching level isn't quite there. But there was a load of fun games in that decade, and it sort of was reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
Canada were a lot more structured and a lot more physical and had a much better set piece and had all their fundamentals right.
Yeah.
And that did for France, who were more flair.
Yeah, had probably collectively had better hands and probably slightly better rugby playing instincts. I'd say they'd be better at tip rugby. Like they were good catch pass from 1 to 15, but it wasn't enough because it would break down, and they didn't have enough of an end product to see them out. But it was a tremendous game.
Yeah.
Like that is analogous, because it does feel like in terms of professional development they're not quite where the men are at in terms of just the amount of detail and money going into it. But yeah, it did have some of those pictures of game, like famous games from the mid noughties and stuff, where you'd have certain plays, things like the held up play that creates a maul, that kind of thing, where people would just be rumming into contact, very kind of like, and then a lot of hurdy-durdy old school stuff in breakdown. You do see a lot of that, and it's great to see, kind of refreshing. But then one point that we did actually wanted to make as well on the tackle thing was it turned up in the USA New Zealand game, where the Scottish reffing, I can't remember her name, but didn't really have a great game. But there was one instance of just a very physical shoulder to the head that was just after some TMOing. It was just ruled a high tackle, which was crazy considering the directives we've seen in the men's game. And it made me wonder, and I don't know the answer, is it officiated differently in the women's game?
I don't think
I'm not sure, but she certainly didn't apply any of the new guidelines, things like force, no mention of mitigating factors. It was literally just high tackle, even though it was a forceful shot with the shoulder to the head of a dipping opponent, but the tackler herself had ample time and space and didn't get low, so it felt like it could have been red. We were just watching it going like, that could be red, hopefully it's only a yellow. But it
should have been a red as per the new directives. But I just don't. We'll get into it. Probably next week we'll talk about the new laws.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those.
But it's one of those ones. It was more just to make that point about, like, it was like watching it from a Six Nations game from 2006, where you'd see a very physical high hit and someone getting clotheslined, and it is just penalty, high tackle, keep it down and play on. And you're like, by modern standards, that's not going to cut it. But it is just kind of, it gets you kind of nostalgic watching some of these the women's games, just because some of the shape and some of the structure of what they're doing. But like, whatever about all that, waxing lyrical about it, and I do really love and want this to be a successful tournament. It's taking place in San Diego.
I just wanted to mention that overall sort of the games have been interesting so far. But in terms of the dynamic of who's going to win the comp, it's looking like a show between New Zealand and England. And just shout out to the Black Ferns, who are looking, for my money, like the best team in the comp so far. Very smooth, very awesome team. Perfect hands. A great halfback. The number 9 has it stroking the ball off both left and right foot. Finding space with the boot and really running a game.
Certainly making the US look very silly for all their huff and puff and that game we're watching.
They're approaching really an elite level that is above everyone else, and it's going to be very exciting when England do end up playing the Black Ferns, because I think that is the game for 1 and 2 in the world right now. Although Canada, to be fair to them, they did get beat by the Black Ferns, but they're a big physical tough team, and France on their day can beat anybody, which is why this tournament is so much fun and it is such a great idea, and I was so pumped when I heard about it. But as you say, there have been
problems. It's been marred by some just kind of systemic problems. It is in San Diego, isn't it? That's where they're hosting.
Yeah, it's in the so far all the games have been played in the Chula Vista Elite Athlete Training Center,
which the pitch itself has been There's
been a load of complaints about the sort of facilities for starters. Just one of the things is that the pitch is just a small little pitch in the middle of a field, with nobody attending the games.
Yeah. Well, like the fans have to bring their own chairs apparently. Like there's barely even bleachers there, and there's just trees in the background, which is nice scenery, but
it seems to have been marketed very poorly. It seems to have not been taken too seriously. There seems to have not been any kind of serious drive to get the public out to the games. They totally didn't help themselves by the way they scheduled. They didn't schedule any really big games on the opening couple of weekends. Like they could have made more of a show of it. Maybe had the US play Canada to open us up, or England against New Zealand, to generate that interest, or to try and generate that interest. But yeah, I can't believe that they marketed it at all, given the fact that there's just nobody there. And then there have been massive complaints about the idea of all this. The people are bringing their own seats to the game if they're fans. Apparently they're changing in tents with portable toilets, and it's all just very
amateurish, pretty shameful. Which is why good shout out to Sky Sports themselves for actually covering it, so we can watch it. We have it recorded. Like it's good that there's a camera crew at least there doing justice by the women, because these are the best teams in the women's World Rugby game.
Exactly. It's as good a showcase for the women's game as you can get. And at an administrative level, it seems to have been bungled somewhat. I know Scotty Stevenson from New Zealand was railing against it.
He was one of the more outspoken ones to kind of throw shade that way, and he's right. He is right. Like I'm in full agreement with him, because like watching the games is to see elite professional athletes in the women's game, and just reading of the tournament for anyone who's knowledgeable about it. Just reading those teams was to be excited about it, going like, oh wow, this is great, because we're going to get to see some competitive professional women's games, and that's like such a marketable thing, or it should be. And the fact that the pitch is just barren behind it, and like barren and bald in certain patches of the pitch as well, which is another factor. The pitch itself is pretty poor, so it's just none of it seems to make sense. They are
apparently, as the tournament goes on, I don't know why they have started at such a slow key, but they are going to move at some point or play some games in Torero Stadium, which hosted the Major League final.
That's the San Diego Legion Stadium.
Hosted the Major League Rugby final, and it's a good stadium, 6,000 capacity.
Perfect.
So hopefully they'll get some people out to that.
But it's not the first time bungling at an administrative level has happened for the women at all. Like the Women's World Cup, which happened here, was pretty shocking on that front as well.
It's a constant theme of the women's game. One step forward, two steps back. They don't know if they're pros or not. 1 year they are, 1 year they aren't. The rugby does suffer for it, and it would be nice to see it backed, because this tournament in particular does have marketability, because the games
and prestige.
The games that don't involve the US in this game are actually very watchable. There's a lot of good rugby going on. The Black Ferns right now are a joy to watch.
They are.
But England have their own say in this women's game.
They're
for
awesome
sure
too. This is why it's great to see outside of a World Cup cycle the opportunity for those two to play each other in a competitive tournament based kind of
for some silverware.
That's great.
It's real. But it becomes less real the more that you stick them out in a field with no fans.
And you're changing in a prefab, and there's no actual toilet facilities there, and it's all
a team like France is going to care less about this competition 100%. With the best teams in it than they would about the Six Nations, because it just doesn't feel like it's being taken seriously by anyone in charge. Which is why it's always frustrating. Like, a lot of what World Rugby put on paper is great, and it just would be nice to see, especially in the women's game, so what's written on paper be brought to fruition.
Because especially with Sky Sports are there covering it, you have multiple angles of something that looks much worse than it ought to.
There's no question. Like, Sky Sports bring money with them.
They do.
So I mean, if they're covering it, you can't think that it's completely off a shoestring budget that it's being put together. So it's an odd one, but absolutely credit to Sky Sports. You can watch. There's a couple more games tomorrow, which are well worth the watch on Sky Sports, one of the Sky Sports channels, if you have them.
Action or something.
I'm watching with great interest. Although I have to say, just one more comment on the thing is it was the same in the Under-20s World Championship. But the 4 day every 4 days they're playing a game of rugby, and that's just silly.
It is silly. It's not football. Like even for footballers, that's sometimes too much of too sharp of a turnaround. It seems crazy that, but is it just for convenience of like you'd rather?
Of course it is, but it's not right for rugby players.
No, it's not. like it's such a physical collision based sport. You try and explain a 4-day turnaround to someone who's in the NFL or something, they'd be looking at you like you have three heads, or someone who's a boxer or something, they'd be going, what the hell are you talking about?
Even Johnny Sexton would give you a glance like,
he would.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm going to play 60 minutes now and I'll see you next month.
You know, exactly, or at least next week. So it's definitely that aspect of it isn't right, and you're probably going to see some injuries before the end of the comp because of that.
Couple that with the pitch being a bit of a ridiculous kind of patchy desert looking terrain.
Totally. So that element of it is frustrating, but the takeaway for you guys should be to give it a watch. It's a barren enough time for rugby until the Pacific Nations Cup / Rugby Championship gets going.
Sure.
So we're if you're feeling a bit of rugby withdrawal, if the Crusaders Jags doesn't do enough for you on Saturday evening UK time, there's a couple of class women's games to tune into between the best side that game has to offer, which is always what you want to see.
100%. Yeah, we'll be watching that for sure.
Absolutely. And finally, we're just going to round up the show. It is a super quick one today, folks, with the news of the week.
Rugby news of the week. For what is it? Third now. We're into July. Oh my. And we have a few little tidbits of headlines. Obviously, we covered it in the segment on Super Rugby, but Crotty and Scott Barritt are out of the final, but they're potentially out for the Rugby Championship as well. Yeah,
I was thinking. I think I heard that Crotty is almost certainly out for the whole Rugby Championship,
right?
And that Scott Barritt is more up in the
air.
And
go, yeah.
But certainly that's a massive news for New Zealand, and it gives them headaches, well, maybe less headaches, but also interesting headaches at centre in terms of what they're going to do with that jersey. Is Sonny Bill going to come back? Is it going to be Leonard Brown and Goodhue, who I don't know that have played together at all?
Mape going to get a look in.
Mape in the mix, so but
there's there are options, but none of them seem like a cogent partnership.
No,
not for the most part.
I liked the idea of Leonard Brown and Crotty, and
I really like the idea still of Leonard Brown and Ben Smith, but that doesn't seem to be on the cards.
No, it's not on the cards even a little bit. So that's obviously big news, and best wishes to those guys. They're two top players.
Really good. We want to see them back in full action for the World Cup anyway. And then another, as I think Khaleesi, you were saying just before we started.
Khaleesi's same boat.
Touch and go for the first few weeks of the Rugby Championship anyway, and then hopefully he'll be back to it. Does give it his jersey's already nailed down anyway, so it gives an opportunity to have a look at some of the other guys that they do have. The Springboks always just have a wealth of talent to pick from. So.
There's some signing news. Sergio Parisse, namely, is signed. He's gone to the dark side.
Yes, the Imperial March playing as him and Boujalal come out. He's not good.
Signed for Toulon for a year. So he'll be finished probably next year. He's just getting a payday.
Which I don't begrudge Parisse the payday at all.
I'm happy for him. I think it's hilarious because it's another example of Boujalal not really getting it and not spending his money wisely.
As much as I hate to say it about a legend of the game like Parisse, who is exactly that, and I will not forget that, he hasn't been the force that he was. Like, you can see that in Six Nations. Literally for the last 2 to 3 years, he's been a dwindling light in the game. His flame has been kind of going out, and the fact that Toulon would fork out so much money for him now to play, like, that's still going to leave them weak in the number 8. It certainly won't make them elite in the number 8 jersey in the context of European campaigns next year. That's just it's not going to help them.
No, it's if like Boujalal has done a lot of damage to the game, but he would be a lot more dangerous if he wasn't so incompetent.
It's true. It's true. He's just buying names. He's always just bought names. So Parisse is a great name in the rugby world, and to be fair, I wish him all the best down there. It's not on him. I just wish the club would suffer. But it seems like Stad are suffering a fair bit. They're being sued retroactively by a lot of players who have left who feel they're owed money. 20 grand or something like that. And then obviously this exodus comes with it. They're losing Mike Prendergast, is going to Racing, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth as well, considering I
think they were the guy. They might have been the team pushing the merger, the Parisian merger, a while back as well. I think they are in some financial trouble. Stad.
Well, they seem to. I think that I was reading somewhere that they've accrued a massive deficit over the last 2 seasons, and it's bought nothing. They're not succeeded. So I don't know where they're at now.
Probably it will remain to be seen what will come of that, but certainly troubling times seemingly ahead for Stade Francais. The next bit of news is that this was broken actually in June, but it was interesting. There's a Jaguares 15 that's the latest Argentina 15 to be competing in an event this year. They're going to go to the Curry Cup.
That is interesting. That's great.
Yeah, I think that's props to South Africa for doing that.
Yeah. You include a new.
They've just welcomed Argentina into South African rugby.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It's a nice thing to do. And South Africa are great for rugby. They're proper, like the Curry Cup's a proper historic competition. So
it's a great competition.
It is a great competition. So I'm sure, I'm not privy to what was being said over there, or even just bar reading a few articles on South Africa Rugby Mag. I don't know what the consensus over there is. But I'm sure there were a lot of naysayers and traditionalists kind of decrying this and saying it's tarnishing, sullying the Curry Cup. No, it's not an Argentinian kind of thing. It's the South African Cup. And there probably were a few people saying just that, but no, I think this is a progressive step, and get the Jags in there.
Hey, we let them into the Celtic League.
We did, yes. If you want to go that route, what are South Africans doing in our Celtic League? But we don't. We don't think that way. It's just another look to another picture of the game and another challenge for the team. It just adds a bit more colour to any competition to have different styles, and the Jags are definitely that. They definitely.
And then finally we have ourselves some World Cup squads. 4 in the week that is.
It's beginning to get towards that season when people start naming them.
To be fair, Australia, England and South Africa, I'm just calling them World Cup squads, they're Rugby Championship squads, and that is important because there are some players who will come in.
England's isn't though.
England's isn't, it's a World Cup training squad, but we're starting to get a sense of who's in and who's out for these teams. I have to say the most impressed off the cuff with the Springbok squad. I was just looking at it, and
he's applying common sense rules to this. Like every other country in the world has to struggle for depth and build depth systematically. Whereas the South Africans just produce so much depth that literally the entire European domestic game is floated by expat South Africans who are just plying their trade elsewhere professionally and doing it to a very, very good level across the board. So they just do have a myriad of different players to pick from, which is why the challenge for them isn't about building depth, it's about picking the right players on form and building a squad. And that's what was so hilariously comically being gotten wrong by the previous administration entirely. Like there were players there were so many notable omissions. You were looking at like Willy Leroux lighting it up in Europe and not getting a look in sometimes. There's countless examples of the foreign players. Scott Britz's entire career in Saracens being overlooked, not anymore. He's now included finally. Like Razzie is applying common sense. The likes of Cheslin Colby lighting it up for Toulouse. Elstad also in Toulouse. They're there because he's not ignoring the European game.
No, he's picking his best players. It's a super strong squad. The only place that there really isn't that depth in is probably Tighthead and 10.
He's opted to only pick the 2 10s.
Well, he has Willemse on retainer. Willemse's injured, and he could come in. At the moment, it's Andre Pollard or no Joy, because I don't rate Elton Yankees as a good second option. Kerwin Bosch is probably the guy who's most unlucky to miss out.
You'd think so,
As a Sharks fan, that one hurts, but a lot of other Sharks boys got in.
And there are a lot of fullbacks in the squad in general, so it's like that's probably the reasoning behind it. But it could end up biting them. If Pollard goes down, I don't know what happens to that team.
It becomes
that becomes the same thing for any top team, really. I don't know of any of the true contenders for the World Cup who can say if our first 10 goes down, we're not in trouble.
Well, definitely not. It's not like question of trouble, but like if Sexton goes down for Ireland, I think Carberry's more competent than the Yankees. I mean, in Moanga and Barrett, the All Blacks are okay. And England actually would struggle without Farrell.
England definitely would struggle without Farrell. Who are you putting in the French one?
Cipriani's comparable to Carberry, so he would have his own thing. And the French have their myriad of 10s, and Australia have a myriad of not great 10s as well. So there are sides with more depths. The South Africa have the greatest drop between 1 and 2, I would say. And so certainly Pollard is one man who needs to stay fit for their chances. But outside of that, their squad is really, really strong and impressive.
Genuinely physically strong, but also very, very impressive.
All over the pitch. There's just no
weakness there.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the likes of Marcel Coetzee, who's had an excellent season for Ulster, not ignored. He's got in there and he's an out and out 7. So there's like good variety to their back row now. You can pick a number of combinations that will work very well. And the fact that Khaleesi's out for the first few weeks means that you're going to get to see that. Radzy's going to be playing with those rotations a bit, and he's still he's still just putting the pieces together, because South African rugby is a bit like that jigsaw, and especially with things like the quota system involved in it, it's always a little juggling act of what goes where.
Make the Springboks their own thing, and they're very good for doing that. I mean, they're coming together from everywhere to play a game in a couple of weeks' time against Australia in Johannesburg, which I
would imagine they will win.
Yeah, can't wait for that one. Australia also named their squad.
That's more worrying. Australia, like you have to feel it's going to come a cropper for them at some point. Like, it's amazing. It amazed me last World Cup, the fact that they got to the final in it, because we've been bemoaning some of their lack of depth and some of the kind of the deterioration in some of their just their overall their game, their rugby presence, and that was true going into the last World Cup, and it felt like an amazing rebellious streak and a like little chip on their shoulder, as well as some wonderful techers to get them through all the way to the final. Like, they can still compete with the top teams on a 23 versus 23 man basis. They can go toe to toe, but behind it there's just not the depth there that there used to be, in terms of like the Wallabies at the turn. When you're looking back on old Lions videos of like 2001 and some of that great Wallabies side and great Wallabies sides from the 90s, your Michael Linas and all this, and it's just, that doesn't feel like it's there anymore. And the fact that coaching globally has got to such a level, and every other team, their competition is so detailed and knows exactly what they're doing, it feels like, as well as having loads of depth and loads of interest in the game growing rather than shrinking in the country, it feels like at some point this is going to come unstuck for the Aussies, and it could be this World Cup.
Certainly looking at the Springbok squad by comparison, it was just seeing seasoned internationals and top elite level pros in every position, and was stacked.
The headaches were all like, oh, who do you pick? And it's like, it's not a sense of...
Looking at this Australia team, I'm seeing... Like, they've brought in a number of young uncapped players. Toulon, who's back in, Falau Fayanga, guys who've had serious disciplinary issues.
James Slipper's there.
That was the other thing I was going to say, is that James Slipper, who's a guy who you thought was done with Test rugby, is now back in the mix. And again, is like for a World Cup winning loosehead, he is not. So they have the potential. You know, we know what danger guys like Adam Ashley Cooper can do. We know from the pack, like if Rory Arnold goes well, if Jack Dempsey comes back in and shows some of that sort of 2016 era form that he had, you know, there's potential there. If they click, they can be good.
Footballers, they can click and be very good. But it's things like people like Karevi. Is he like a shoe-in to start? Probably.
No, it's Karevi or Kurandrani. They have that option. But their backline, like in 2015, they got a huge boost when they brought back in Gitto and Drew Mitchell, and this time they're sort of bringing back in James O'Connor. And I'm just thinking it's not quite the same thing. I'm looking at the team player for player and talent for talent, and I'm thinking that they have the deficit against most sides.
I'm also thinking it's crazy shit to not be including
Quade Cooper.
Well, Quade Cooper for one, Will Skelton for another from Saracens, and Scott Fardy from Leinster. All have had, well, mainly the two rowers like Skelton and Fardy have had stellar seasons, two seasons. Skelton is fitter than he ever was in Australia, and is therefore doing more damage. And
he breaks their rule.
Yeah, considering just the depth or the lack of depth they have, and some of what they've been offering, like Ned Hannigan. You're going to bring Ned Hannigan, but you're going to leave Scott Fardy out. You're going to leave Will Skelton out. That's crazy chat. It's just ludicrous. It really is.
It's kind of a curious one. I'm curious to see what they look like, what team they're going to end up putting together. I have a much clearer picture of what South Africa and the All Blacks and the Six Nations teams are going to do with their starting 15 than I know with what Czechs is going to do. So it's definitely
certainly in the wake of Falau Gate and all this as well. It's all very open. Like that fundamentally changes how they were playing the game, though, because they were a very Falau-centric team in terms of how the backline operated.
You had said to me that you thought that there was as good an argument to be made for Quade Cooper at 10, and now Quade Cooper's not in the squad. Lea Lafano's in the squad with Bernard Foley. It's
so weak. That means that Foley just has to start again. That's in my opinion anyway.
Or Chamua is in there as well, but another.
That's again lends credence to my argument that he has to start. Like Quade Cooper is the foil to him. He's the grenade to throw in when it's going wrong, and Foley is a fine footballer, but he's not that elite. Like, you're not looking at one of the greatest 10s ever to play the game. You're looking at a solid test level solid 10. and that sometimes doesn't go well, and it's nice. It would be nice to have someone like Quaid, who is fundamentally different, to be able to throw in if things are going wrong. But it seems no, they're not going that route. And to be fair, Quaid, like all of those Aussie forwards, have had performances you can point to in this year's Super Rugby to lead you to believe that they're not the full shilling. Like, there's been some questionable, dubious plays from every single one of them. Quaid as well, and like some of those rebels showings towards the latter half of the season would leave you concerned. But I still think, he has a bit of X factor that they need, given that they're struggling for players and they're trying to coax players in from rugby league to come and play in the World Cup, that kind of stuff. If they're at that level of scraping the bottom of the barrel, Quaid Cooper's not a bad option to bring with you.
No, I agree, and so my suspicion is that surely the Wallabies are going to struggle this year just because the standard around them is so high. The All Blacks named their squad, and it's predictably strong. A very good all over. The surprise being no Naholo, the outside backs. They've gone for the two Crusader wings, George Bridge and Parisse.
Hard to argue.
You've got Ben Smith and you've got Jordy Barrett. And you've got Rico, obviously, has nailed down the 11 jersey, and even Braden Enner got in there, so he could play centre or wing as well.
His versatility will probably serve him well in the World Cup squad standings.
They've all strength all over. The 6 jersey is the one that's open. Liam Squire turned down his place in the squad. I think the first man since Brad Thorne to do that.
Wow.
He went to Steve Hansen. According to Steve Hansen, he said he just had a conversation with him, and Squire said for whatever reason that he's not ready to play test footy right now, and so he's not going to be in there.
It's a curious one, because that could do his standings a bit of harm. He's not a shoo-in. I think he's in competition with a lot of players,
the likes of Shannon Frizzell and Via Fafita,
even Akira Ioane, who's been left out. But Squire's definitely in that bracket, so this is one of the few windows he has this side of the World Cup to really nail that jersey down.
It's hard to know. There might be something personal going on there, but it's a very strong squad for the All Blacks, and they're still, despite the strength of the seeming strength of your Wales, Ireland, South Africa, England, they're still very much front runners going into the World Cup and front runners going into the Rugby Championship and champions of that as well. And it's a very fine squad, and I'm looking forward to see them in action as well. The other squad that was named was England. Not as popular with me.
Dubious selections again plague this England side. This England side that should be genuine World Cup contenders and up there as number 1 or 2 in the world most of the time if you're picking the best team.
I watched Saracens play this year.
They're unequivocally the best team in Europe by far, arguably the world, because Crusaders have stuttered a bit more this year than
the best club team in the world. And while there are a lot of them in there, there are guys missing for no reason. So certainly Alex Good,
European Player of the Year.
That should
tremendous fullback.
It should be a show-stopping headline, like the European Player of the Year.
The amount to which he frees Farrell up to play a much looser, better game as well, just by his presence, can't be understated either. His omission is bonkers. But then similarly, ones that you wouldn't like you were saying just off camera, is going to watch that Saracens season is to think, and to watch that Saracen season coupled with the rest of the Premiership season and how the rest of the Premiership clubs got on in Europe compared to how Saracens did, even Exeter. You're looking at that, and then that should be enough to draw the conclusion, right, I need to get mostly Saris in here. Saris across the board.
It's not even just that. There's such talent being omitted from where England are at. There's some dubious calls all over. Good to see Cipriani get in for
That's
sure.
That's true.
But Ollie Thorley is the other one for me from Gloucester. That to me is another blow your mind. Like when you have a player in a World Cup year on fire, scoring unreal
particularly
tries.
A winger, specifically
a winger, exactly. Who
thinking like Milner Scudder. The All Blacks are always ones to throw the young inform winger in there.
They respect it, like Braden Enor. Like they're noticing this guy, and Severis, who bursting onto the scene in a World Cup year, scoring loads of tries, defences can't handle them. Absolutely,
Get
we
him
respect that. Let's see if he can do it at test level. And Ollie Thorley was a great example of that. And to leave him out of the squad seems baffling. It's just again limiting.
It's like McConaughey, I think.
Exactly. It's limiting their weapons.
But then similarly, Ben Teo rears his head again in the context of it. And you were making the very valid point that even though he's not a starter for Saris, I'd sooner have Tompkins there than Ben Teo by far. Tompkins is at least a rugby player who can pass a ball occasionally.
So it's just a little, it's constant. Like England, for me, talent wise this year should be front runners for the World Cup. They have, in like what they've done with not picking good is take them from a place where they would have had one of the best fullbacks in the world to now being really
slightly weak in that
really
area.
Light at fullback. Elliot Daly, not really a traditional fullback in a lot of ways, exposable and being covered by two wingers in Noel and Anthony Watson who don't naturally play. So that depth chart at fullback goes from very strong to really weak. And they're exactly, guys like Ben Teo and there don't help, which weakens their depth chart at centre. So
another area where you think they should be deep.
And then tight head is another area as well of massive concern. They've Kyle Sinclair and Dan Cole in the squad. Dan Cole, who's really not quite there anymore, very much just does his fundamentals, tries to lock down the scrum, and that's it. And then Kyle Sinclair, who's a penalty
he's kind of the opposite. Like he does some great plays because he's a super athlete, and they like England always err on the side of the super athlete more than the rugby player, especially in the pack. But he is such a ticking time bomb, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were to lose a quarter final because of Kyle Sinclair.
Exactly. Kyle Sinclair is a guy who could have done with being given the Axing Quade Cooper treatment, just because he's going to be, right now he's more trouble I think that he's worth.
I would agree.
So the other headlines from that England squad is that there is they went for I'm really glad at scrum half they've gone for Ben Youngs, who's the incumbent. Ben Spencer. Ben Spencer's a very good bring in. He's actually ousted Wigglesworth in Saracens just for being very good this year. But Willie Hines' third choice is a curious one. I mean, it's not as big a deal as some of the other omissions, in particular those two in the back three. But the idea that you're not gonna pick Dan Robson or Danny Kerr for a Willie Hines is a curious one.
Seems a bit strange, all right. In other news headline worthy, Chris Robshaw or Hartley are out, I think.
Yeah, Chris Robshaw and Hartley is probably fair.
That is good. That's form wise. Like you just couldn't do that.
And the only other one, I thought Michael Rhodes. I know we're Sarries obsessed, but I thought Michael Rhodes could have had a shout.
There are a lot of good back rows in that South African squad, though.
That English squad.
Or is he in England qualified?
He's England qualified.
Okay. Well, then there's an argument. One thing that is more positive about this England team now is that they do have two genuine number sevens, which they had none a couple of years ago. Sam Underhill and Curry. Tom Curry. That is they're two genuinely elite players in that area, so that'll improve them there.
This is the thing with the England squad, is that I'm looking at it and I'm super disappointed with the omissions, and I think they've made themselves weaker than they need to be. But unlike Australia,
the Sarries halfbacks are the only two Saracens backs in the squad.
Yeah, exactly. With the exception of Daly, but he hasn't played for Saracens yet. So from that team, it's a bit mental. And like that's the prevailing narrative of Saracens, is that their forwards win them all their matches. But I think they have awesome. The best backline.
Are you kidding me? Like awesome.
So absolutely, the overlooking of those centres and Alex Good is criminal. But they still have in the squad that they've selected. They, unlike sort of Australia, they have the luxury to make some ropey calls because they have such strength and depth, and you can still find a test 15 that's going to be ferocious from there. I just think that their weak points now are really tight head and fullback
and broadly selection.
But the fullback one stems from selection.
Well, it's the European Rugby Player of the Year.
Fullback.
Like he was the best player in Europe this year. How is he not good enough for the England squad? Crazy.
The England squad. It's a crazy call. He hasn't. Eddie Jones has never been a fan of him, and he's dead wrong. So those are the initial squads. Test rugby is a coming. But first this week we're gonna have to watch the last of the domestic rugby, the Jaguares against the Crusaders. That's our theme, that's our headline for this show.
For sure.
It's been a bit more of an abridged one, a bit more tight, but this is the time that we had. So thanks very much for watching.
100%. We'll be back next week to review as we say, the Super Rugby final, and we're still rooting for the Jags on this podcast for sure. But thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys. Bye.
You're up.
Left and wide.
Too low.
Okay.